Buenas tardes. No other poet has been such a formidable companion and complement to the National Book Critics Circle's 35 years than the incomparable John Ashbery. In 1975, he was a recipient of the NBCC Inaugural Award in Poetry for his book, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, which also received the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. He went on to become an NBCC finalist 3 times after that. In 1977, for the poetry collection Houseboat Days. In 1984, for the collection A Wave. And in 1987, for April Galleons. And this past March, he joined us on stage once again as a translator of the Poetry Award finalist, The Landscapist, by the French poet Pierre Martery. This long-standing relationship is of no surprise to those of us who are loyal admirers of a man whose prolific output is consistently accomplished and acknowledged. It is, however, of consequence, since it speaks to the Executive Board's ability to sustain a high level of criteria and integrity in its selection process, even as 1/3 of its 24-member board is rotated out of the jury each year. Tonight, as we celebrate 35 years of exchanges between critics and writers, writers and readers, let us hear from a well-respected artist whose voice has been a true and enduring testament to those qualities we, the critics, value most: originality, risk-taking, sophistication, and craft. Fellow writers and readers, please help me welcome John Ashbery the Great.
I didn't need that 35 years ago, but what can you do? It's great to be back here. Actually, it's great to be anywhere, but especially here, amid this group where my book, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, was picked as the first poetry winner in 1976. And a few months ago, my translation of Pierre Martery's The Landscapist was nominated in the category of poetry. Thank you all. Coming from a jury of book critics across the country, these awards inevitably mean more to a writer than one chosen by a handful of judges. My NBCC award for my 5th collection of poems happened when I was in my mid-40s and served to jumpstart my somewhat sagging career as a poet. That is to say, my work had been around and been reviewed, often unenthusiastically, for about 2 decades. Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror was given a terrific reception in the New York Times Book Review by John Malcolm Brennan, a poet I had admired during my youth and who subsequently became a good friend. It got a quite unfavorable one from the New York Review of Books, edited by my Harvard classmate and dear friend, Barbara Epstein. As we all know, and I was a critic for many years too, both for the Times Book Review and occasionally at the New York Review and other places, editors don't usually get to call the shots in such cases. It happened that another friend and critic, David Calstone, was chatting with Elizabeth Hardwick one day about this and that, and mentioned that it was too bad about that review. Elizabeth said, "What do you mean John is always winning all kinds of awards?" "No," David said, "he hasn't won any." Elizabeth, who was of course a member of your august body, seemed to ponder this and said that she'd look into the matter. I'm not sure if that had something to do with my NBCC award, but that happened only a few weeks after the conversation I've described. Then amazingly, the book went on to win the National Book Award and the Pulitzer. I'm still incredulous that this could have happened, and so I gather are a lot of people. A few years later, when Susan Sontag and I happened to be visiting Poland together, she mentioned my winning what inevitably became referred to as the Triple Crown, and told me that controls had since been put in place to ensure that no book ever hogged all the awards again. But I've been asked to not just speak about myself, but about changes in book reviewing in the last 3 decades. At the risk of sounding ungrateful, I have to say that poetry gets a lot less space in general interest publications than it used to, though this isn't necessarily a bad thing, either for general readers or for poets. There seemed to be a moment in the 80s when mainstream media discovered that they didn't have to review it, like an adolescent who suddenly discovers he no longer has to choke down his veggies. But this event has been accompanied by a rise in specialized journals like the terrific Rain Taxi in Minneapolis, American Book Review, and others, as well as blogs that supply poetry readers with their delicious roughage. It seems to have resulted somehow in an increased readership for poetry. Those of us who want it know where to look and communicate our knowledge to others like us, which is great. And of course, we don't have to cancel our subscriptions to, say, the TLS or the NYRB for those moments. Important for us, too. When one really wants to sink one's teeth into a study of where conservatism is headed, or about 14th century Burgundian agricultural practices. Hey, we're just like everybody, except that we like to read and write poetry, too. So once again, thanks, National Book Critics, for letting me come full circle. That is to be here, beaming my gratitude at you, both for what you've done for me personally, not just as regards poetry, but for all the things you write about. It seems inevitable that the more books there are, the less time one will have to keep up with them, which is why so many of us gorge on reviews. They give us the delicious feeling of having read something without spending the thousands of hours we need to really learn about everything. They're one of the essentials of home life, along with naps, those much maligned lattes, and Bill Moyers. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you.